So what we're going to do now is to start setting up the local development environment, and I will be using Eclipse to interact with the code. Some of the requirements that you have is to be running in Java 8. I think it was since dotCMS 3.5 that we only support Java 8. In previous versions, if you are running something before 4.0, you also need and install. But right now we are not, we don't need that anymore. Of course, you need to check out the source code from Git, and you can use your IDE of your choice. I will be using Eclipse because the training requires so. But in my day-to-day development, I use IntelliJ. As a database server install, we are going to use the default one. We are not yet going to change anything related to the database configuration, so we are going to use the H2. That's the one that is already provided. And remember that if you want to use SQL Server, the Microsoft one and Oracle, those are only supported by the enterprise license. So you can just go ahead to install. We are going to need Postgres or MySQL for the last day of training in order to do a couple of examples using the framework, our framework for the database. Let me just go into the terminal and shut down. But well, we can leave that. No, let's shut down the server in order to be able to remote debugging when we have everything ready. And now I am going to clear this window and do a git status to make sure to see what changed. Okay, so I manually changed these properties. I think that you are not able to see this because you will need some special configuration, but this is my enterprise source code. So please ignore this. And there seems like this, there is a git ignore added that we have still to check out, to check in. But this one we can modify it to reset it. So each count minus one is going to be this path. Okay, do a git status again. Remember that we are using the tag 4.2.2, and that's it. These couple of things you can ignore that. Okay, so in our documentation we have how to configure. Let's see if I can find it. Sometimes it's quick. It's easier to just look through Google. So dotCMS, source code, development from source. Okay. This one. Okay, yeah. This is almost the same that we sent, that Dean Gonzalez sent you, the configuration things that you have to do. You can use the git clone without the recursive if you don't have permissions to the enterprise. I have the permissions to the enterprise, and if you have an enterprise license, I think you can ask for a copy of the source code, but it's not necessary. Actually, it is not necessary. So if you don't have access to that enterprise, just ignore this. Just do a git clone and this path. Then the first time that you have to configure this is you have to run the deploy warp tomcat test. This is another task that we use. It is the same that the deploy warp tomcat, the one that we keep using, but in this case, it also compiles all the testing environment. This is because the dependencies.gradle file has all the dependencies in it that we need to retrieve from the Artifactory. So we use this one because we also need some additional third-party libraries in order to run the test. So we use this one in order to set up every library that you might need when developing. That's why we run the deploy Tomcat test the first time, instead just the deploy Tomcat, in order to have the test third-party libraries also included in there. Depending on the IDE that you are going to use, this is the Eclipse instructions, and then you have the IntelliJ. The IntelliJ is a little more complex, but it is not that hard. But we are using Eclipse right now, so what we are going to do is just to do a Gradle clean Eclipse, just to be sure that we don't have any remainings of an old setup or something. So I'm going to do a Gradle W. Remember, always do a Gradle W. Use that script and the clean Eclipse. And right now, and after that, I'm going to do a Gradle W Eclipse. And that should configure everything that we need in order to run under Eclipse. Basically, before 4.0, we had a different structure in our source code. Not everything was using Gradle. We have a lot of AND tasks, and Gradle as a wrapper of those AND tasks. The configuration of the project was very, very hard. It included creating a Java project from the existing sources, but also setting up all the build paths that we need. In that time we needed to create a build path for the core. We needed to create a build path for the test. So it was really a pretty confusing and time wasting process. And that's why between 3.7 and 3.7, I think it was the latest release of the 3.0 series. Between 3.72 and the 4.0, we improved a lot of how we handle the project for the developers. We included and we migrated every task that we have in AND to use Gradle, and we improve our hierarchy, our directory hierarchy, in order to Gradle to automatically detect every build and every jar that it needs. So that's why we have this couple of tasks in here. We have just show you the Gradle W Eclipse and also the Gradle W. Let me just go into IntelliJ. There is a Gradle W idea. Seems like there is nothing in the documentation, but there is also a Gradle W idea. And this is manually importing it. That's another option that you might have. So, okay, we're ready with Eclipse, and right now I think, let me just take a look. I think I have, as you can see, I have my Eclipse. This is the Eclipse that we're going to use. I downloaded the latest version like 2 weeks ago. What was the name? Eclipse Oxygen. That's the latest version, and we have here the Eclipse workspace that we are going to use. But I think that Eclipse workspace is already with something else, so I'm going to delete that folder in order to start from a clean slate. Eclipse workspace. That's it. So basically what I have right now is the core, the source code, the Eclipse. This is the installation of the Eclipse IDE. This is another repo that we are going to download tomorrow for tomorrow and the last day of training. We also have the presentation that I've been showing, the Tomcat 8. That's the one that is automatically created by the source code, and some videos that we have from previous trainings. Okay, so I'm going to open Eclipse. Let me just go into Eclipse. Let's see how this goes. Well, seems like this is from October 2020, 2017, sorry. So right now I am using dotCMS, training, and Eclipse Workspace. Just the same that I just deleted, so it will be created. And just give it a couple of seconds here. I'm going to close this. I'm going to close the welcome page. And now, following the instructions here, what we have to do is just open Eclipse and import the project. And select the existing project into Workspace. I think we can also just go and do this. Existing projects into Workspace. This is the one. Next, I'm going to select the root directory. That's going to be, just go into training core .cms, and this is very important. The .cms is, the project is under .cms, not under the core, but in the .cms. And open that one. Let's see how it goes. We'll just click finish, and it will try to refresh everything and build everything. I've been reading about the Eclipse new IDE, and there are like a lot of validations. For example, XMLs, JSP, and a lot of things that it recently was included by default. So there are some times when building this workspace, you're going to get another errors here related to problems with the XML files, with the JSPs, with several files. Let's see if we have those problems in here. Okay, the first time it takes a while to do. We have a lot of code in there. So let's wait until this is finished validating.cms. It's almost done, seems like it. Let's see in the meantime if we can find those validations. Let's see. I think it's this one. Yeah. Inside, let me just go back. Inside, as you can see, it displays some JSON problems, some JSP problems, and XSL problems. And those are with, for example, it was expected this, it was expected that, a bracket or something else. Some of the things that we already know that work, and maybe this is not compatible with the latest version of the validation on Eclipse. So what we need to do is just to ask Eclipse to not validate those things. So under Eclipse preference and validation, we have those kinds of things. For example, XSL, the XML. So I think we can just uncheck this for both manual and build. What else? The JSP seems like it's also on the JSON, also giving us problems. DSPs. I'm going to hit apply. It needs to rebuild everything. Let's see if that fixes anything. Apply and close. And just wait a couple of minutes to see if those errors that we don't need goes away. Okay, as you can see, all the problems and the red errors are gone. If you want, you can also delete those, but these are warnings, so we should be okay. I think for the remote debugger that we are going to use right now, we need to be free of errors, so it will be better if you can just delete or uncheck those validators. These Java problems, most or all of those are warnings. Remember that we have been developing against dotCMS source code like for 15 years, 12, 15 years. So we have some things that are deprecated now, or some things that we have a better way to do it. For example, the collections in Java and everything else that we need to be improving. What I wanted to show you is how, and it is very easy, how to configure the remote debugging using the source code that we just implemented. So what I'm going to do is just go into the Eclipse. I think it's under, here, under the ROM option here, and the debug configurations. Right now, I think we don't have any configuration because I deleted all my workspace. But what we want to create a new one is a remote Java application. So I think we can double click on this one, the remote Java application, and I am going to set it as a core or .cms, whatever you want. It could be .cms, it could be core, it doesn't matter the name that you put it. The important thing is that the project that we want to remote debug it is called .cms, that it's the one that is here. So my name is going to be core, the project is going to be .cms. By default, we have the local host. Of course, we are working in the local machine, so it will be localhost, and the port is going to be 8000. By default, we use the port 8000 in .cms script. So what we have to do now only is to apply here and to debug it. It will set that the connection is refused, and this is because .cms is not running. Remember that I shut down the server. So if we fix correct Tomcat is not running, there is no Tomcat running, so that's why the connection is refusing. You will just click here, okay, and right now we are able to see. We are going to see this core, and this is the one that we are debugging. Now, in the .cms part, this is the instance. I'm going to start the instance, and one important thing in order to be able to remote debug is to pass an option to the .startup script. So basically, I'm going under Tomcat bin, I'm going to run .startup.sh, and I'm going to pass the debug option. And we can take a look. I think tomorrow we are going to take a look to this script and see where we are setting up anything. So by now, we just send the debug option and we start .cms. As you can see here, it prints that it's going to use the default debug port that is going to be 8000, and that's the one that we configure in Eclipse. And it will be start right now. I'm going to tail.cms log just to be sure that everything is running just fine. Let me just go and close these couple of things that we have here. Okay, .cms is starting. Let's take a look to, I'm going to hit this localhost/c to the backend and wait until this is ready. If we go into the Eclipse right now, and if we click here on the debug icon and click on the core, nothing is going to happen, but see that we didn't get the pop-up error, and that means that everything is running smoothly. So we can go and change the perspective using this icon and go into the debug perspective right now. Right now, as you can see, we are using the remote Java application. We are hitting the core. That's the one that we configure. And one thing to be sure that we are remote debugging, it's that we can see all the threads that dotCMS has already running. So these are all the threads. Most of the threads are for Quartz, the cron job kind of framework that we use. A lot of things we run it via Quartz, for example, that we need to run a site search or a broken links process every 30 minutes, every 5 minutes. So every of those jobs is a Quartz job. Also, we have some Elasticsearch job and a lot of stuff more. So basically, if we can see these threads running inside the perspective, inside the Debug perspective, we are good to go. And now let's wait. Okay, so dotCMS is ready. Go to the admin, and we are going to try to put a breakpoint in one of the most used classes in dotCMS, and it's called CMS filter. The CMS filter class, this is one of the first filters that we have in dotCMS. Every request, or 99% of the requests, are going through here. So I'm going to put a breakpoint in there. I'm going to do something here. Okay, this is asking to launch the debug perspective, so I'm going to click yes. And as you can see, we are able to debug it right now. This is the line that we are right now, and these are all the variables and the values that we have right now in for this class. So basically, we are remote debugging, and tomorrow and in the last day, we are also remote debugging external projects inside the dotCMS. For example, you have a OSGI plugin that you want to remote debug, or a static plugin with some source code that we are going to take a look. So both of those examples are going to be displayed tomorrow and on Wednesday. And a very used feature here in the developers, in the R&D team, that is the hot code replacement, that you are going to be able to just change code here and be reflected immediately inside the dotCMS. But we are going to see that tomorrow and on Wednesday. What else? I wanted to talk about a couple of things before ending this session. Let me just shut down. Where is that script here? Shut down. I am going to do a Gradle W deploy war Tomcat in order to delete everything that is under the Tomcat that we have in place, and in order to explain you what is happening in these couple of scripts, the one that deploys everything and the one that starts everything. So basically, Gradle tries to compile everything. We have some aspect frameworks. We try to clone or to pull the Tomcat. It verifies that the Tomcat 8 already exists in your system, in your file system. If it doesn't exist, it will try to grab that from our repository in the dotCMS GitHub page. It will try to undeploy war Tomcat. It will try to remove everything inside the Tomcat folder. Then we are going to compile and build some immutables library that we have. Then it's going to create the jar file. This will create the jar file for dotCMS. It will compile every plugin that we have, and we are going to take a look to this process tomorrow. All the plugins that we have in dotCMS are getting compiled every time that we do a deploy for Tomcat. After this, we install the new dotCMS UI. As I told you, we use Angular UI for dotCMS, and that's another repo inside our GitHub. So it grabs the latest UI, and it tries to build it inside the dotCMS. This is what it's doing. Then it's going to create the WAR file. After this, it's going to undeploy the plugins. We are going to see more about that tomorrow. And then it's going to do the deploy war Tomcat. And this means that it's going to grab that WAR file, meaning all the files, all the JSP files, all the HTMLs, all the properties, and the jar files that we have. That WAR file is going to be placed under the Tomcat directory, and it's going to be exploded in order to have the root project inside the Tomcat. Here go Babs and the root. This is everything compiled, and this is everything ready. So basically, the deploy war Tomcat does that. Remember the deploy war Tomcat backup. If you want to use those, also it does the same thing that the deploy war Tomcat does, but before it starts, it will grab the folders as a backup. It will copy those folders outside the Tomcat. It will do the same that the deploy war Tomcat does, and then it's going to copy those backup directories inside the Tomcat folder. So we are going to end up with the same information that we have before the deploy war Tomcat. So just to be clear, remember deploy war Tomcat is going to delete everything if you still have the assets and .secure and database under the Tomcat, and the deploy war Tomcat backup is going to try to do a backup from those folders in order to not lose anything, maybe a test page that you are working or some server that you are working, in order to not lose that. Now what I wanted to show you is to the start with the .cms. Let's just start it, and I'm going to wait until the .secure is created in order to tail cms.log. So let's wait 20-30 seconds, and after that we can take a look to the log. Okay, so basically, let's see. Basically, .cms, the first thing that it does, sorry, I guess I will have to wait until this is done. Well, I can explain this. Basically, .cms, it will try to get data. The first time that it starts, and all the times that .cms starts, is going to retrieve data from a table that is called DB version. That DB version is the table that handles the latest version that you have installed in .cms. This is very useful for us to make sure that the database is created and what version of dotCMS are you running in order to upgrade it if you want to upgrade that. So the first thing that it does is to check that table. If that table doesn't exist, it assumes that .cms database is empty. So it starts to create everything, every table that it needs. And it depends on the database that you are using. Right now we are using the H2. So I think it's called h2.sql, and it is under source main resources. So this h2.sql, let's say it's a big file, so I guess it takes a little while to open it. It creates everything that we need in order to run properly inside .cms. It creates all the tables, it creates all the constraints, it creates all the triggers, all the functions, everything. So .cms, the first time that it starts, it will create everything that it needs. Right now, we are still, as you can see, we are seeing some of the index that it creates, some of the things that it creates. And then, as you can see, we have the import-export util process. The import and export util process, what it does is to import everything to create the new demo site. And every data that is in here in the starter.zip, take a look, that is a big zip file, almost 60 megs of information. Those are JSONs, images, files, XML files, all the data from the database from demo, it gets created in here. So basically the import export util is what it does. Then we still have some Hibernate process that we have to upgrade to get rid of Hibernate. We are doing that work currently. After that, we'll set up some configuration of the Hibernate. Then we have the caffeine. We use caffeine also for the caching. After that, we have a couple of problems with the demo site, and it tries to create some of the primary keys or something like that that it doesn't. You can ignore those, but it doesn't match some of the roles and the permissions that we have. But it's just that we need to clean some of the stuff in our demo site. After that, well, the import export util, it creates everything it needs. It creates all the folders, it imports all the files. Then we are going to start some of the reindex thread. What we call reindex is the first time that we start, we need to create an elastic index from somewhere, so that right now we have everything in the database, so we can start the reindex. And after that, it will build again all the caches that we need or that are needed right now. You can see here are still indexing. What else? We handle every server as a one node cluster, and that's why you can see here some information for the cluster things. What else? Reindex, the maintenance utils is trying to find out where are these light working menus inside the .secure. They are not ready, so it created those. The caching, it tries to start a cluster, but as we only have one node or local node, it will only configure that one as a local node. What else? Elasticsearch is still running, still building. These are the upgrades task that I mentioned. the latest upgrade task is 4230, and that's how we know that you are in the 4.2.2 version of dotCMS. Create some of the portlets that we need. It instances some of the servlets and say some of the information that we need. We are using the database H2. We are running under community license. As you can see here, the server ID, the community edition. It doesn't expire because we are not using any license right now. After that, we start all the Quartz jobs that we run it. We run all the Quartz jobs. As you can see, these are all the jobs that we have. And after that, it will just configure the OSGI framework. And that's the last thing that it does before you can access dotCMS. And as you can see, it starts the reindex thread, and we are good to go. So let me just refresh this. The first time it tries to set up all the caches and everything, so that's why it takes a little longer. And that's it. We go to the system, maintenance, index, and you can see both of the rows in good, in excellent health. That's it. Basically, those are the two things that you need to be aware of when developing. Maybe you can see an error and you can troubleshoot from here. But basically, what it does is compile everything. It deploys the plugins. It creates the WAR file and then explodes the WAR file inside the Tomcat. And this one is going to configure everything the first time. If the database is empty, creates everything, fills the data from the starter.zip file that we have. And after that, it just configures the cluster, the elastic, and the caffeine, and the caching that we have in order to be used the first time. That's why the second and the third and all the other times, it will be a lot faster because dotCMS doesn't need to recreate all the tables because they are already there, and it doesn't need to import and export every thing that we have in our demo site because they are also already there.